guys, it is me. I am back. In case any of you noticed I hadn't uploaded a video in a while. So updates, I guess. Got my hair. It is now June. The world has exploded. So I figured, what is a better time than to go over what I read in May. So I'll talk about a little bit about the books that I finished last month. So I have a big old stack here of everything that I read. The first of which was a sorry, drop everything. The first book that I ended up reading was Good Poems, which is a selected group of poems by Garrison Keillor. You might know Garrison Keillor if you've ever heard Fairy Home Companion or read any of his books. He's written several, I think all about the fictional town of Lake Wobegon, which is also where the Prairie Home Companion is based as well. Pontoon is one of them. It's really good. But yeah, so these are just a collection of some of his most favorite poems, or poems that really meant something to him. And they're by like a whole bunch of poets, W.H. Auden, Elizabeth Bishop, Charles Bukowski, Raymond Carver, E. Cummings, Billy Collins, Emily Dickinson, Seamus Heaney, Langston Hughes, Erica Jong, Galway Kinnell, Shakespeare, William Carlos Williams, W.B. Yeats, like just a whole bunch of poets. And it was a pretty enjoyable selection. I did know several of them already because some of them are quite famous, or I remember I'm going to kind of take them apart when I was in school, so that was kind of cool to read it again as an older adult. But yeah, it was enjoyable. I probably don't read poetry the way you're supposed to. I tend to read it like a lot in one sitting rather than just kind of reading and reflecting on the poem. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. And pardon me while I move a bunch of stacks of things. The next thing that I read is The Mask of the Enchantress. It is by Victoria Holt. I've been kind of rediscovering some of the Victoria Holt that I read as a teenager. This was one of them. And I found that I did not enjoy it as much as I had the first time I read it. So my problems with this book were 2 parts. One being that the majority of the book was set up, and the last quarter was where everything kind of caught up to the first like 2 paragraphs that were describing being in some kind of tangled web of lies. Yeah, the action, like the action part, the stuff that we're like waiting for described in here, didn't really happen until like, yeah, that last section of book. So that was disappointing. And another thing was the way that the native peoples on the island, where the main character resided for a time, it was not great how they were described, the stereotypical ways that they, the way that they were viewed. I do know that this is supposed to be, I mean, it was written, I think, in like the 80s or something, but the time period of when it's set is like, I think, the late 1800s to early 1900s. So, like, I get that the way the main characters interacted with these people probably time period correct, but it just wasn't something enjoyable to read, um, especially reflecting on it now. Um, so that kind of really brought it down for me a lot, and I kind of gave this 2 stars. The descriptions of like the island and everything were pretty good. Still, and it was an interesting twisty turny tale, um, but the other issues within were just kind of a lot. Um, so that's that one. Sorry, lost my forgot where I was in my notes. So that I read this past month was They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. This is, of course, a graphic novel version, a graphic novel autobiography of his childhood in the Japanese internment camps during World War II. This was a very heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time book to read. There's very sweet bits in it, but it was very rough. Not like writing wise, but I mean like the content. Um, so, but it was still just a really good read, an important read. And the art style was just very enjoyable as well. It was kind of had like a simplistic um, kind of look to it, but I found that very charming, and it just kind of added to it. So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Next ones I read are basically 3 out of the Longmire Mystery Series by Craig Johnson. First up being Death Without Company, then Kindness Goes Unpunished, and Another Man's Moccasins. It started out good for me overall. Like, Death Without Company was, it kept my interest. It was very different than some of the references that were made to like another episode in like the series, and I've been watching the series. So, okay. So that was good. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars, because I did ultimately like the journey, and I was very surprised by the ending. And then we move into the next book, Kindness Goes Unpunished, and this one was just completely unexpected. I did also still enjoy it, but there was some confusion, was mostly my problem with that. Sorry, I let the cat out. Yeah, I was mostly kind of confused as to some of the aspects of the story. Not to give too much away, but there is like a drug dealing aspect to this. A large chunk of it takes place in Philadelphia, and it was just, I don't know, it felt like it didn't quite fit in with the rest of the story, and the bits of it were kind of like confusing, and would this even be allowed? Like it just seemed kind of I don't know, not really as believable as the other books that I'd read. Um, but I mean, it was still a good read. It was just kind of meh. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, and then Another Man's Moccasins, I ended up also giving a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm kind of mixed on that one. This one deals a lot with flashbacks to the Vietnam War and the parts that both um, Henry and Walt played in the Vietnam War and some of what they were doing over there. And um, so in that aspect, a lot of that was hard to take and read. And there was also, it was still kind of important though, because it did address the racism and attitude surrounding the Vietnam War, and also um, the racism and attitudes that surround Native Americans. It was just it brought a lot of that up, which was, a good thing. They're trying to like handle it. But at the same time, I don't think that it was always carried off in the best manner. Um, and it was also, again, with the confusing bits. It just seems sometimes where people jump to conclusion very quickly rather than kind of showing how they came to the conclusions. It's I don't know. It just ends up being, I mean, it's still like a fast-paced read, but a ball of confusion a lot of the time. So that's kind of why I ended up with also with 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Ordeal by Innocence by Agatha Christie. This one was kind of been a disappointment of a read. I thought that the plot initially sounded really interesting. It's not one of her um, special detective ones. It's not Tommy and Tuppence, Poirot, or Miss Marple. It's just like a standalone um, novel about a doctor who comes forward to provide proof that an accused man is actually innocent, only to find that the accused man has died while in prison. And fortunately, because he has come forward to insist that justice must be served to clear this man's name, the entire family is now, the entire family of the man is, and the victim actually, is now like under suspicion. They're all suspected to be murderers, and this is ruining various aspects of their lives. Um, so it's kind of like it's largely a discussion on, um, you know, justice, um, seeking the truth, as well as kind of the difference between nature and nurture, because the victim was the adoptive mother of the accused man, um, and the rest of the family are also children that she adopted with her husband. So that was the part that bothered me, I think, besides the fact a couple of the words that they used to describe one of the characters who is half white and half Indian. Um, but a lot of the trouble was involving what everyone was saying about adopting children, um, that basically nobody wanted them, so why should you want children that nobody wanted? Um, why should you trouble yourself with this? No wonder that all of them are fucked up because, you know, it's in their DNA. Nobody wanted that, like terrible stuff like that. Um, Mixed with also blame on the mother for having been, because she wanted children so much and could not have her own biologically, she decided to find these children to initially help them and then ended up um, making them hers legally. So there's also a lot of discussion on, because of her overprotectiveness and overbearingness, this caused issues for these children. It also brings up um, her basically, you know, stealing them in a sense as well. It's like a very complicated um, mess and a complicated study, I guess, was what Agatha Christie was trying to do on, again, what justice is and nature versus nurture. Um, which I guess I can get what she was trying to do, but it still infuriated me throughout the entire thing to constantly read opinions like that, because that is just, you don't, sometimes the family you're born into is not the best family for you, and sometimes you make your own family, and there should be there's nothing wrong with trying to give children uh, a loving home because of circumstances they're left on their own. That's something that I had a problem with. I also had a problem with the ways that she got a couple of the children, because that was shady as hell. But it's just, I don't know. It infuriated me. I'd have to take some time to unpack it. And I'd honestly probably have to read it again to really kind of try to see fully what kind of message she was trying to come across with here. I don't know. It's a mess. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars because that's how I felt about it at the time. When I put my review on Goodreads, but again, I'll probably have to come back to it and think about it again, because I don't know, man. It's also a limited TV series, so I might just, instead of fully rereading it, I might just watch the TV series again. I don't know. Next up, I don't have a physical copy because I read it, or rather, I listened to the audiobook online being read by David Warner, I believe, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. That scared the shit out of me. That one has been on my currently reading list for quite a while because I started the audiobook like almost 2 years ago. I think right around the time when the Haunting of Hill House Netflix series came out. I really wanted to read the book and then watch the whole series. Of course, I didn't make it all the way through the series because I became afraid of everything. Thank you, bent neck fucking lady. So, yeah, I did not finish listening to it until like a week and a half ago. So, um, but even after that time and trying to remind myself of what had happened so far up until then, it still really, um, really kind of freaked me out. It is I guess not your typical scary story, but all the way through the book leaves you um, on edge and uncomfortable and very, very unsettled, which I guess is the point. But I did enjoy it. I did honestly really enjoy the experience. I think it was a lot better because I had read a couple, um, like a chapter or two of it, just regularly, but I think I enjoyed it a lot more in the audiobook version. Um, but yeah, so I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it, but because it scared me so much, I really do not think I will ever be reading it again. Just probably not ever. um, okay, I am way over time that I wanted to spend, so we're gonna go quick with these last ones. I also read a bunch of manga this month as well, or this past month. I First one is A Wise Man Sleeps. It is by Mick Takuchi. I am sorry if I am mispronouncing that horribly. Um, they are also the mangaka that wrote Her Majesty's Dog, that I think is a little more popular than this one. But that's a full like 11 volume series, I believe. But yeah, you probably saw this in my book tour video of my manga and graphic novels. So I had got this one, the first volume a couple of years ago. Found the second one online, so got that and finished the series. While I enjoy it because I mean, there's honestly you can't go wrong with a sassy teenage girl having to help this weird guy solve like supernatural alchemy crimes. Like that's pretty cool. Um, Problems I had with this were first of all, um, very info dumpy a lot of the time, and secondly, also this was way too rushed in the second book. Kind of disappointing because it seems like this series could go on for a little while. There were still some like unresolved bits concerning debts and her missing father, and just a lot that she could have done kind of to further this. But yeah, it just kind of ended. So that's why I kind of gave it a lower score. Like the first volume, 4 stars definitely. Second volume was more with 3 stars, just because it was very rushed and there was no like actual real ending. And then the last books I read are the series of Aquarian Age Juvenile Orion. This is by Sakuraku Gakurikuen, and I have had the first 4 volumes, these puppies, since like high school, back when I was super into this. And I just recently managed to find the last book online, so I figure we'll reread the whole series and see how this ended. Another one that kind of had like a weird sudden ending with no real resolution. Um, I don't know if there's an offshoot series to this at all. It almost seemed like they were going to try to have one because there are other characters brought in this book. Um, who seemed fascinating. I wanted to learn more about them, but again, it just abruptly ended. Um, I don't know. I think that's part of it being kind of so uh, weird, I guess, throughout would be the fact that this was based off of a card game, which I had completely forgotten about. Um, but yeah, it was like a full blown like Yu-Gi-Oh card game experience or something. So I don't know. If you are interested in a short series, basically this is about a 16-year-old girl who moves back to her hometown 7 years after she left, following a terrible accident that killed her dad. Her mother's recently passed away, so she's moved back with her aunt, and hopes to run into her childhood sweetheart, who is now avoiding her for strange reasons, and she ends up getting pulled into this centuries-long supernatural war between these like 4 or 5 different factions, and all of these guys, like students and a teacher, are all part of these factions. It's like it's a confusing ball of confusion. Um, I mean, it is interesting. The art style is pretty, and I have to say, just like 16-year-old me, I'm still a fan of the martial arts guy. But um, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting series, but it feels like it could do a lot more. But if you do want to check it out and see it for yourself, it might be worth a read. I don't know. It depends on whether you're okay with slightly unresolved endings, or just kind of like endings that are tropey but also kind of open-ended. I don't know. But yeah, so that was all of the books that I read this past month that totaled up to 15, which is the most books so far that I've read in 1 month. So yeah, I will probably be coming back to you very soon with a video on what I plan to read this month of June. So yeah, um, thanks for watching.